The 3 Jewelled Rings. There was once a wise and very rich man who had a son. He said to him, "My son, here is a jewelled ring. Keep it as a sign that you are a successor of mine, and pass it down to your posterity. It is of value, of fine appearance, and it has the added capacity of opening a certain door to wealth." Some years later he had another son. When he was old enough, the wise man gave him another ring with the same advice. The same thing happened in the case of his third and last son. When the ancient had died and the sons grew up, one after the other, each claimed primacy for himself because of his possession of one of the rings. Nobody could tell for certain which was the most valuable. Each son gained his adherents, all claiming a greater value or beauty for his own ring. But the curious thing was that the door to wealth remained shut for the possessors of the keys and even their closest supporters. They were all too preoccupied with the problem of precedence, the possession of the ring, its value and appearance. Only a few looked for the door to the treasury of the ancient. But the rings had a magical quality too. Although they were keys, they were not used directly in opening the door to the treasury. It was sufficient to look upon them without contention or too much attachment to one or the other of their qualities. When this had been done, the people who had looked were able to tell where the treasury was, and could open it merely by reproducing the outline of the ring. The treasuries had another quality too. They were inexhaustible. Meanwhile, the partisans of the 3 rings repeated the tale of their ancestor about the merits of the rings, each in a slightly different way. The first community thought that they had already found the treasure. The second thought that it was allegorical. The third transferred the possibility of the opening of the door to a distant and remotely imagined future time. This tale, supposed by some to refer to the 3 religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, appears in slightly differing forms both in the Gesta Romanorum and in the Decameron of Boccaccio. The above version is said to be the answer of one of the Suhrawardi Sufi masters when asked about the relative merits of various religions. Some commentators have found in it the origin of Swift's Tale of a Tub. It is also known as the Declaration of the Guide of the Royal Secret. The Man with the Inexplicable Life. There was once a man named Mojud. He lived in a town where he had obtained a post as a small official, and it seemed likely that he would end his days as inspector of weights and measures. One day, when he was walking through the gardens of an ancient building near his home, Hida, the mysterious guide of the Sufis, appeared to him, dressed in shimmering green. Hida said, "Man of bright prospects, leave your work and meet me at the riverside in 3 days' time." Then he disappeared. Mojud went to his superior in trepidation and said that he had to leave. Everyone in the town soon heard of this, and they said, "Poor Mojud, he has gone mad." But as there were many candidates for his job, they soon forgot him. On the appointed day, Mojud met Hida, who said to him, "Tear your clothes and throw yourself into the stream. Perhaps someone will save you." Mojud did so, even though he wondered if he were mad. Since he could swim, he did not drown, but drifted a long way before a fisherman hauled him into his boat, saying, "Foolish man, the current is strong. What are you trying to do?" Mojud said, "I do not really know." "You are mad," said the fisherman, "but I will take you into my reed hut by the river yonder, and we shall see what can be done for you." When he discovered that Mojud was well-spoken, he learned from him how to read and write. In exchange, Mojud was given food and helped the fisherman with his work. After a few months, Khidr again appeared, this time at the foot of Mojud's bed, and said, "Get up now and leave this fisherman. You will be provided for." Mojud immediately quit the hut, dressed as a fisherman, and wandered about until he came to a highway. As dawn was breaking, he saw a farmer on a donkey on his way to market. "Do you seek work?" asked the farmer, "because I need a man to help me bring back some purchases." Mojud followed him. He worked for the farmer for nearly 2 years, by which time he had learned a great deal about agriculture, but little else. One afternoon, when he was baling wool, Khidr appeared to him and said, "Leave that work, walk to the city of Mosul, and use your savings to become a skin merchant." Mojud obeyed. In Mosul he became known as a skin merchant, never seeing Khidr while he plied his trade for 3 years. He had saved quite a large sum of money and was thinking of buying a house, when Khidr appeared and said, "Give me your money. Walk out of this town as far as distant Samarkand and work for a grocer there." Mojud did so. Presently he began to show undoubted signs of illumination. He healed the sick, served his fellow men in the shop and during his spare time, and his knowledge of the mysteries became deeper and deeper. Clerics, philosophers, and others visited him and asked, "Under whom do you study?" "It is difficult to say," said Mojud. His disciples asked, "How did you start your career?" He said, "As a small official." "And you gave it up to devote yourself to self-mortification?" "No, I just gave it up." They did not understand him. People approached him to write the story of his life. "What have you been in your life?" "I jumped into a river, became a fisherman, then walked out of his reed hut in the middle of one night. After that, I became a farmhand. While I was baling wool, I changed and went to Mosul, where I became a skin merchant. I saved some money there, but gave it away. Then I walked to Samarkand, where I worked for a grocer. And this is where I am now." "But this inexplicable behavior throws no light upon your strange gifts and wonderful examples," said the biographers. "That is so," said Mojud. So the biographers constructed for Mojud a wonderful and exciting history, because all saints must have their story, and the story must be in accordance with the appetite of the listener, not with the realities of the life. And nobody is allowed to speak of Khidr directly. That is why this story is not true. It is a representation of a life. This is the real life of one of the greatest Sufis. Sheikh Ali Farmadi, died 1078, regarded this tale as important in illustrating the Sufi belief that the invisible world is at all times, at various places, interpenetrating ordinary reality. Things, he says, which we take to be inexplicable, are in fact due to this intervention. Furthermore, people do not recognize the participation of this world in our own, because they believe that they know the real cause of events. They do not. It is only when they can hold in their mind the possibility of another dimension, sometimes impinging upon the ordinary experiences, that this dimension can become available to them. The Sheikh is the 10th Sheikh and teaching master of the Khwajagan, or Masters, later to be known as the Naqshbandi way. This version is from the 17th century manuscript of Lala Anwar, Hikayat-i Abdalan, Tales of the Transformed Ones. The Man Whose Time Was Wrong. Once upon a time there was a rich merchant who lived in Baghdad. He had a substantial house, large and small properties, and dhows which sailed to the Indies with rich cargoes. He had gained these things partly through inheritance, partly through his own efforts, exercised at the right time and place, partly through the benevolent advice and direction of the King of the West, as the Sultan of Cordoba was called at that time. Then something went wrong. A cruel oppressor seized the land and houses. Ships which had gone to the Indies foundered in typhoons. Disaster struck his house and his family. Even his close friends seemed to have lost their power to be in a true harmony with him, although both he and they wanted to have the right kind of social relationship. The merchant decided to journey to Spain to see his former patron, and he set off across the western desert. On the way, one accident after another overtook him. His donkey died. He was captured by bandits and sold into slavery, from which he escaped only with the greatest difficulty. His face was tanned by the sun until it was like leather. Rough villagers drove him away from their doors. Here and there a dervish gave him a morsel of food and a rag to cover himself. Sometimes he was able to scoop a little fresh water from a pool, but more often than not it was brackish. Ultimately, he reached the entrance of the palace of the King of the West. Even here he had the greatest difficulty in gaining entry. Soldiers pushed him away with the hafts of their spears. Chamberlains refused to talk to him. He was put to work as a minor employee at the court until he could earn enough to buy a dress suitable to wear when applying to the master of ceremonies for admission to the royal presence. But he remembered that he was near to the presence of the king, and the recollection of the Sultan's kindness to him long ago was still in his mind. Because, however, he had been so long in his state of poverty and distress, his manners had suffered, and the master of ceremonies decided that he would have to take a course in behavior and self-discipline before he could allow him to be presented at court. All this the merchant endured until, 3 years after he quit Baghdad, he was shown into the audience hall. The king recognized him at once, asked him how he was, and bade him sit in a place of honor beside him. "Your Majesty," said the merchant, "I have suffered most terribly these past years. My lands were usurped, my patrimony expropriated, my ships were lost, and with them all my capital. For 3 years I have battled against hunger, bandits, the desert, people whose language I did not understand. Here I am to throw myself upon your Majesty's mercy." The king turned to the chamberlain. "Give him 100 sheep, make him a royal shepherd, send him up yonder mountain, and let him get on with his work." Slightly subdued because the king's generosity seemed less than he had hoped for, the merchant withdrew after the customary salutation. No sooner had he reached the scanty pasturage with his sheep than a plague struck them, and they all died. He returned to the court. "How are your sheep?" asked the king. "Your Majesty, they died as soon as I got them to their pasture." The king made a sign and decreed, "Give this man 50 sheep, and let him tend them until further notice." Feeling ashamed and distraught, the shepherd took the 50 animals to the mountainside. They started to nibble the grass well enough, but suddenly a couple of wild dogs appeared and chased them over a precipice, and they were all killed. The merchant, greatly sorrowing, returned to the king and told him his story. "Very well," said the king. "You may now take 25 sheep and continue as before." With almost no hope left in his heart, and feeling distraught beyond measure because he did not feel himself to be a shepherd in any sense of the word, the merchant took his sheep to their pasture. As soon as he got them there, he found that the ewes all gave birth to twins, nearly doubling his flock. Then again, twins were born. These new sheep were fat and well fleeced and made excellent eating. The merchant found that, by selling some of the sheep and buying others, the ones which he bought, at first so skimpy and small, grew strong and healthy, and resembled the amazing new breed which he was rearing. After 3 years he was able to return to the court, splendidly attired, with his report of the way in which the sheep had prospered during his stewardship. He was immediately admitted to the presence of the king. "Are you now a successful shepherd?" the monarch asked. "Yes, indeed, your majesty. In an incomprehensible way my luck turned, and I can say that nothing has gone wrong, although I still have little taste for raising sheep." "Very well," said the king. "Yonder is the kingdom of Seville, whose throne is in my gift. Go, and let it be known that I make you king of Seville." And he touched him on the shoulder with the ceremonial axe. The merchant could not restrain himself, and burst out, "But why did you not make me a king when I first came to you? Were you testing my patience, already stretched almost to breaking point? Or was this to teach me something?" The king laughed. "Let us just say that, on the day when you took the 100 sheep up the mountain and lost them, had you taken control of the kingdom of Seville, there would not have been one stone standing on top of another there today." Abdul Qadir of Gillan was born in the 11th century near the southern shores of the Caspian Sea. Because of his descent from Hassan, grandson of Muhammad, he is known as Sayyidna, our prince. The powerful Qadiri order is named after him. He is reputed to have displayed paranormal powers from childhood, studied at Baghdad, and spent a great deal of his time in trying to establish free public education. Shahabuddin Suhrawardi, one of the greatest Sufi writers, who wrote The Gifts of Deep Knowledge, was his disciple. Innumerable wonders are related about both of these men. He had a large number of Jewish and Christian as well as Muslim disciples. He died in 1166. As he lay on his deathbed, a mysterious Arab appeared with a letter. In it was written, "This is a letter from the lover to his beloved. Every person and every animal has to taste death." His shrine is at Baghdad. Since Abdul Qadir is widely venerated as a saint, numerous hagiographies dealing with his life are current in the East. They are full of wonders and strange ideas. Hayat-i Hazrat, Life of the Presence, which is one such book, begins like this. His appearance was formidable. One day only one disciple dared to ask a question. This was, "Can you not give us power to improve the earth and the lot of the people of the earth?" His brow darkened, and he said, "I will do better. I will give this power to your descendants, because as yet there is no hope of such improvement being made on a large enough scale. The devices do not yet exist. You shall be rewarded, and they shall have the reward of their efforts and of your aspiration." A similar sense of chronology is displayed in The Man Whose Time Was Wrong.